This is ChangeMakers with Katie Gore, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
This week's ChangeMakers are Tanya Dempsey and Nicole Graham, the co-CEOs of CSG Advisors. Tanya and Nicole are experts in affordable housing finance and development with over 30 years of combined experience advising housing authorities nationwide. Both have deep expertise in strategic planning and real estate transactions, with Tanya's emphasis on financial management and Nicole's emphasis on maximizing public investments. Tanya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
And Nicole, welcome as well.
Thanks so much for having me.
So we have a lot of information to cover, and I'm thrilled to have you both here. Let's start by giving our listeners an overview of what CSG Advisors is. Nicole, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. So CSG Advisors, we are a municipal advisory firm. We focus on public agency clients. Tanya and I lead the public housing authority practice, where we work helping housing authorities and local housing departments both craft and execute financings for individual developments and entire housing portfolios, and just sort of generally work at helping public agencies perform at their best.
Tanya, you and Nicole are co-CEOs. Tell us more about how that dynamic works.
I am so excited to be on this podcast. I feel like I'm a long-term listener, first-time guest. I know Nicole is as well. When Nicole and I started this practice, what we found to be super valuable was incorporating both of our perspectives in the way that we approach our work. And so becoming co-CEO was kind of a no-brainer for us. We are a package deal. And I think we really do believe in the idea that the job is very big. And when you have a partner that you trust, kind of like in a marriage, you share that role. And there are strengths that I have and there are strengths that Nicole has. And I think that having a co-CEO role, one, is super, super unique, but it does, I think, play to both of our strengths and also allows us to be supportive in ways that you wouldn't necessarily be able to if you didn't have a co-CEO role.
This could be Nicole, maybe. Do you see, you mentioned earlier your experience in the single family bond practice. Do you see a lot of other women in that practice or in the affordable housing field that you're in right now?
Thankfully, we do. And I'll be honest, like one of the things that I've loved, I've been at CSG for this is my 20th year. And one of the things that I've loved since I started was that in our practice, in that the housing authority practice in particular, right, there are a lot of women. It is more diverse. There are more people of color in leadership and as staff people in the agencies that we work with. That is less true, I would say, on like the, in the housing finance agency world with single family and multifamily bonds. But it is, there are certainly more women there than you might find, say, in the private sector. But yeah, I mean, that's part of what we're trying to, encourage and ultimately change is having more women and more diversity across the industry.
Earlier this year, you transitioned to this female lead milestone for your company. And tell us a little more about how that evolved.
Exactly the way that Nicole kind of described it, right? We noticed that there were a lot of female leaders in the industry that are kind of executive directors, but, chairmen of the boards are still men. And so I think we thought it was really important. The public housing practice leads a number of women as well on our, for our practice. And we thought it was really important for us to transition the firm into a WBE. It was just something that's like we were both kind of super passionate about.
CSG as a firm has started back in like 1978, its earliest iteration, and has always been heavily male-led, like male-founded, male-led. Being a majority women-owned firm now, right, our recent, shift and our recent certification as a WBE, that's really the result of like 5 years of strategy, discussions, and negotiations with the firm leadership to sort of take that lead. And it was there were a lot of ups and downs. Because we really needed to convince the leadership that they should sell, that they should sell to us, and see that doing so would be in the long-term interest of the firm. And that was true, even though we had tremendous performance to point to, outperforming like other areas of the firm in growth and leverage. Like, we still found ourselves needing to defend like a lot of what we did and what we wanted. And so that experience, I think, has really just sort of driven home, I would say, like, or maybe underscored like our commitment to broadening the group, not within our firm, right, but just broadening the group industry-wide so that we do have better, more diverse perspectives, like, weighing in on different things. We have found in our firm that certainly as we became more involved and then ultimately took over, right, like the policies that we adopted as a firm were different, very different from what they had been previously. And those are the types of things that we want to see more of, honestly, not just across the industry, but just across the U.S. Like, everyone should have an opportunity to have that.
Yeah, I'll jump in. One more thing is that, like, the other thing that we did was we spent a lot of time preparing. Obviously, there was a lot of credentials, as Nicole said, but it was like we read Traction. We read all the Brene Brown books. We did a Brene Brown training. We did Good to Great, Start with Why, 4 Disciplines of Execution. Like, we did a ton of, kind of leadership training to position ourselves in a way that allowed us to be CEOs, but I think made a really stronger argument that we were the right fit.
I want to get into the public housing repositioning and the RAD conversion work that you guys are doing, but we have the microphone right now, and I want to keep this topic for just a few minutes longer, okay? We've got some exciting updates that you guys are partaking at NARA with the Women's Empowerment Breakfast. Let's talk about that, because there's implications for gender equality, empowerment, encouragement, all of the concepts, and you guys are really spearheading this. So let's get into that for a minute.
Yeah, I feel like we all sort of pitched it, but I will say first off, Katie, that like I love the company, right? So like being able to work with you and Tanya Beeler and the NARO team, I feel like has been a tremendous gift. I always look forward to our discussions, and I feel so energized every single time leaving them. So that's like the very like super self-centered answer. But I would say more broadly, like I think at the heart of it, I feel a need that we need to retain more women in housing and provide more opportunities for women in leadership. I've seen this, like we talked about a little bit, at CSG, just differences that occur with women leadership, things related to work-life balance and equity in pay and benefits like parental leave and flexible work schedules. And I truly believe that these are things that should be extended across the board. When I think about these breakfasts, like this is an opportunity, in my mind, for all of us to be thinking about our common shared interests, to have a really safe space to talk about those, what brings us all together, and really, ideally creating opportunities and, I don't know, maybe an infrastructure for us to kind of carve out those paths for other women and really making people feel welcome, and that this is a long-term career path with a tremendous amount of growth and personal trajectory.
You both at CSG have done this a few times across the nation. What are you hearing are some of the challenges that women in the affordable housing sector are experiencing? Can you give us a glimpse of those?
So we have done this a couple of times across the country, and there's a wide range of topics that come up. The first and the one thing that like makes me feel so energized, I think that is the right word, Nicole, is the sisterhood, right? So the sisterhood comes up as something that folks across the country, women across the country strive for, and mentorship. So I think that is a common theme that women in particular want to talk about. We did this once for another organization where they actually talked about implicit bias. And a woman told us her story about how she kept being asked to plan these parties and was not promoted and eventually needed to change jobs in order to get ahead. And then she came back to run the agency, which was like such a amazing story, but really kind of spoke to implicit bias. I also think kind of imposter syndrome is another really big theme that comes up at these conferences where people want to share how it made them feel, how different rooms made them feel. And, you know, some of the takeaways there are, you know, simply demonstrate kindness and be kind, because it's unclear what kind of struggles folks have that are in the room. So those are, you know, off the top of my head. I could talk about this for forever, but those are the top three that I think come up for us when we do this, and those stories are super powerful. So we're, you know, happy to be providing that forum and safe space for people to feel inspired and to feel connection.
So identifying the list of items that aren't working or aren't working fairly and equitably, that may be a long list, but is there guidance we could provide for women who are listening, possibly who say, hey, I want to secure some leadership roles, even in the finance realm or the housing realm? How would you advise them, or how would you provide some guidance for that?
One of my big words in this regard is boundaries. I think that can be hard sometimes to observe and to implement, but I think sometimes in order to get ahead, we have to say the things that we're not willing to do, actually. Like the story that Tanya just told, right? If you're always being the one who has to plan the party, right? Like it's really hard to have the time to then get ahead and to not be the one who's sort of like taken advantage of. And I think it's super, super hard to do. But I think that sometimes just sort of asking questions about, you know, whether it's an assignment or, you know, asking the right questions that will potentially help one get ahead, right? So, you know, it's like, hey, can we do ring around the rosy here on these parties, right? Like, I'll do January and July, but can somebody else do the other months, right? Like, this should be a rotating thing. One of my first jobs was actually a policy advisor to a council member, and the council member was accustomed to his two women staffers bringing him soda during these council meetings. And when I told him I wouldn't do that, he got a little upset. But he also then, you know, relayed to his chief of staff that it was like, okay, well, I guess we won't have Nicole get the soda, so we'll have someone else do it. Even though it scared me, it wasn't, and I know that's a minute example, and maybe it, you know, isn't the kind of things that other people are facing, but I think it starts with those smaller steps of, you know, carving out those boundaries of what is appropriate in your role, and then looking for the opportunities to go bigger.
No, I think that's courageous. As like your first job, right? So you're like right out of college or in college, and to be able to kind of push back like that, I find that to be super courageous.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Nicole, the soda is an analogy for so many other things, though, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, we're talking like promotion, compensation, appropriate guidelines. I mean, like fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on that compensation, I mean, this is just such a hard thing, and it's something that we all need to continue to work towards. And frankly, like, we all need to make sure that we are not perpetuating it, right? Because the reality is, what we know is from, the statistics is that women are less likely to ask for those raises, to, respond to the promotion requests and things like that, and apply for those. And because women tend to, more than men, not across the board, but tend to see, like, if 10 qualifications are required and I only meet 8, then, I guess I'm not qualified. As opposed to, when men tend to see that list, they're like, hey, I got 4 out of 10, right? Like, I'm totally qualified. I got it. Right. And so I think we need to really do our best to encourage, all of the women in our lives to be going after it. And, I know Tanya and I, like, when we are reviewing just, internally our own staff, right? It's like making sure that, like, we are not falling victim to that same thing, right? That we are making sure that even someone who may not be, asking for recognition or asking for a raise or what have you, that we are giving that, and that we are showing in our practices that, we're going to be judging people based on their actual performance, not necessarily their character trait of whether they happen to be assertive enough to ask for it, right? But also being, encouraging folks to be assertive. It's tough.
It makes me also think about women entering or re-entering the workforce and the resume juggling there, how some people don't have the ability to say, what is the skill set you've done versus the position that you've had or the gap in history? Those are some of the concepts that I believe has started to come up in some of these women's breakfasts as well. So these are so valuable. I'm so glad that both of you and CSG Advisors has been involved from really the ground floor in getting this launched. What an example for all of us.
Thanks. We're super excited. Super, super excited. We hope that it continues. We hope that it grows. Right. We hope that we're able to make some change.
You two are definitely change makers, and I can't wait to get into your day-to-day work, but we have to stop here. So coming up in the second part of my talk with co-CEOs of CSG Advisors, Nicole Graham and Tanya Dempsey, Nicole talks about the mission of CSG.
We want the agencies themselves to feel empowered, and most importantly in that process, and this is where I get all worked up, is to do it in a way that preserves that long-term affordability, leverages their money to the maximum extent possible, retains control, provides the maximum quality of living housing for residents. That's the goal.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Gore. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.